In part 7 of our recap series for the Metal Gear franchise, we looked at the tanker incident and some of the events that took place during the Big Shell incident, and left off when Iriquois Pliskin reveals that he is the real Solid Snake. In part 8, we will look at the remainder of Metal Gear Solid 2, including the climactic events of what will become known as the Manhattan Incident. Will the real Solid Snake please stand up? Well, he has. With the help of Iriquois Pliskin, or Solid Snake, Raiden manages to survive the attack by Solidus Snake, the real leader of the Sons of Liberty, who is aboard a Harrier being piloted by Vamp. The chopper almost gets destroyed thanks to Raiden's counter efforts, and as it is plummeting towards the ocean, it is caught and rescued by a Metal Gear Ray unit, which promptly escapes the scene. With the showdown over, at least for now, Raiden finally gets time to catch up with Snake and understand just what the hell is going on. 2 years ago, when the oil tanker exploded in the Hudson River, Otacon rescued Snake, who had faked his death by planting Liquid Snake's body. The people who recovered his body would run tests on him, and thanks to the DNA found, they would automatically assume it was Solid Snake. Snake and Otacon have continued their work for philanthropy over the last 2 years, and are here at Big Shell to continue their anti-Metal Gear work. Otacon has personal stakes in this mission as well. His estranged stepsister and expert hacker Emerick, with whom he hasn't been in contact for years, is among the hostages at Big Shell. But while all this new information is quite significant in its own way, nothing has really changed. The president is still being held captive and his life is still in danger. With that in mind, Raiden proceeds with his mission, and ultimately he manages to locate President Johnson. What James Johnson proceeds to tell him is far beyond his wildest imaginations. Both Raiden and us, the player, finally finds out who and what the Patriots are. They are a mysterious secret organization that runs the United States of America from behind the scenes and has complete control over all of the nation. All key decisions, all major steps taken by anyone of any importance in the US are orchestrated either directly or indirectly by the Patriots. Their control extends to all walks of life, and the extent of their power and reach are unimaginable. Hell, they even decide who the presidents of the country are going to be. The elections are all rigged and are basically shams that are served on platters to the masses so that they can be kept in the dark about the existence and the nature of the Patriots, and just how much control they have over, well, basically everything. They control information, they control growth, they control the economy, they control everything so that they can shape the world as they see fit. Johnson tells Raiden that the presidents of the United States, including himself, have been working for the Patriots under their direct orders. In spite of this, however, no one knows who they really are, only that every key decision is made by a committee of 12 people. This committee, Johnson tells Raiden, is called the Wiseman's Committee. Johnson tells Raiden that the leader of the Sons of Liberty is Solidus Snake, who is actually the previous United States President George Sears. Unlike Johnson, who is more than happy to follow the Patriots' order and thus remain in power, Solidus grew tired of their control and tried to free himself from their clutches. It turns out the Shadow Moses incident had been orchestrated by Solidus Snake, who had ordered his agent Revolver Ocelot to convince Liquid Snake to do the things that he did. His objective all along had been to have Ocelot steal the data on Rex, as well as the nuclear warheads on the island, so that he could use them both as a tool and a weapon against the Patriots. When the Patriots learned of this, Sears, or Solidus, was removed from power. Johnson then went on to drop one more revelation on top of Raiden, who, along with us, is already pretty shaken up at this point, understandably enough. Big Shell was a cover-up for the construction of Metal Gear, alright, but it's still not what you think. All of Big Shell is a new Metal Gear unit called Arsenal Gear. It is a gigantic, mobile fortress that houses mass-produced ray units for its defense, and it has the ability to fire nukes. Obviously. That's all pretty basic though. I mean, what sort of pedestrian Metal Gear unit can't even fire nukes, right? What makes Arsenal Gear more powerful and more frightening than any other Metal Gear anyone has ever seen is the fact that it has access to, among other things, the military's tactical network. So, what does this mean? Basically, it has control over the nation's armed forces, and over its nuclear capabilities as well. And what is Arsenal Gear's real purpose? It is to filter information and control information on the internet and all other forms of digital media and communication, to rewrite history and shape the world as they see fit. How is this to be done? through an all-encompassing AI called GW, which was, incidentally, engineered by none other than Emerick, who did it because of the bitterness she bears towards her stepbrother for abandoning her in their childhood. We'll speak more about this in a bit. Johnson hands Raiden a disk containing a computer virus that can eradicate the GW AI, and asks him to locate Emma and have her do exactly that. He then grabs Raiden's hand, forcing him to point the gun at him, and asks him to shoot him. Raiden resists, and before anything else can happen, Ocelot walks in and shoots the president himself, killing him. Interestingly enough, he simply walks once he kills Johnson, leaving Raiden to his own devices. Raiden sets out to locate and rescue Emma, once again encountering and defeating Vamp. Soon, he finds Emma. As the two move through the innards of the Big Shell facility to get to the point where Emma can dispatch the computer virus to shut down GW, Emma tells him GW was not ready for activation, and that the Patriots had planned some sort of major test that was to take place soon and ultimately provide GW with a great deal of new information, which would be instrumental in its activation. As Emma and Raiden are making their way to Snake and Otacon, they get ambushed, once again, by Vamp. Raiden shoots Vamp, who falls into the ocean, but before he does, he manages to do some massive damage. He stabs Emma. Snake and Raiden hurry with her in tow to where they can input the virus to destroy GW, and as Otacon and Emma share one final moment together in the most emotional sibling reunion of all time, the sad fates of the Emericks is revealed in full. If you've been wondering where Huey Emerick has been this entire time, we finally have an answer for you. He's dead. Why and how? Huey, after he was banished from Diamond Dogs, settled down in London, where he married Emily's mother and managed to track down Hal. Hal, however, got involved in relations with his stepmother. This revelation shocked Huey to his core, and he proceeded to take his own life by drowning himself. However, while he did so, he also decided to take little Emma with him. While she managed to survive, she always harbored a deep phobia of water for this reason. This was the reason why she was so scared while going with Raiden through the flooded sections of Big Shell. Jeez. Yeah, Huey was a pathetic person who deserved some comeuppance in his life, but maybe this was a little too harsh. Driven by immense guilt over everything that happened, Otacon left the Emerick household, abandoning little Emma in her greatest time of need. Emma dies due to her stab wound, and as a double gut punch, Snake informs Otacon and Raiden that the virus isn't working as it should, and that it hasn't completely shut down the GW AI. Snake and Raiden decide that they need to get inside Arsenal gear, with their only option now being to take out Solidus Snake and his men, while a heartbroken Otacon agrees to help get all of the remaining hostages out of the Big Shell via helicopter. When Raiden asks Snake how they're going to get into Arsenal gear, Snake tells them that they wouldn't be able to do it on their own and will probably need help. At this point, the cyborg ninja appears again. It is revealed that it's actually Olga Gurlyukovich, daughter of the deceased Sergei Gurlyukovich, in that suit. She is about to knock Raiden unconscious with Snake looking on. Stunned at this sudden betrayal, Raiden asks Snake why he would do something like this to someone who was on the same side as him, to which Snake says that he doesn't recall ever saying that they were on the same side. When Raiden comes to, he realizes that he has been tied up in a torture room and is being questioned by Ocelot and Solidus Snake in a scene that is deeply reminiscent of the interrogation scene of Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid. And it is here that the full extent of Raiden's troubled and horrifying past is revealed. Raiden's real parents were killed when he had still been a boy, and after this, Solidus Snake had taken him under his wing. Solidus Snake raised Raiden as a child soldier, making him do horrible things while fighting in the Liberian Civil War. Under Solidus' tutelage, Raiden, or Jack as he was known then, became a killing machine and soon became the captain of the Small Boy Unit, a unit that consisted only of child soldiers. Due to his terrifying skill with both guns and swords on the battlefield, Raiden was also often known as the White Devil, or Jack the Ripper. Following the end of the Civil War, Solidus handed Raiden over to a relief center, following which he lost contact with him. After Ocelot and Solidus leave the room, help arrives on the scene more promptly than Raiden could have imagined. Olga enters the room and tells him that she is also an agent of the Patriots, and that she has to make sure that Raiden succeeds in his mission. Why is that the case? Remember how Olga had been pregnant 2 years ago during the tanker incident? It turns out the Patriots took her child captive as soon as she was born, to be held hostage as a bargaining chip, meaning that Olga has never even met her. For the sake of her safety and well-being, Olga has to make sure that Raiden completes his mission. She sets Raiden free and leaves. Before Raiden can leave the room, he receives a radio call from Rose, his girlfriend, who asks him if everything Solidus Snake had claimed about Raiden's past is true. Raiden admits to everything, telling her that he was raised by Solidus and that he'd been brought up on the battlefield as a killing machine. Rose, on the other hand, reveals to Raiden that she had been an agent of the Patriots all along, and that while she simply became his girlfriend to keep an eye on him, eventually she truly fell in love with him. Distressed, Raiden presses on, meeting up once again with Snake, who apologizes for his earlier act, explaining that he needed to use Raiden so that they could both get into arsenal gear. Before they can progress, Otacon calls Raiden and gives him an astounding piece of information. The Colonel Campbell that Raiden had been speaking with is not the real Colonel Campbell at all. Remember how Snake, back when he was still Pliskin, had passingly mentioned that Foxhound had been disbanded and dissolved 4 years ago after the Shadow Moses incident? Yeah, he wasn't lying. Raiden had inadvertently been working as an agent for the Patriots for a long, long time now, and has been led to believe that he is a Foxhound agent, while Foxhound doesn't even actually exist anymore. The Colonel he has been interacting with throughout his career in Foxhound isn't even a real person. He's an AI cobbled together from Raiden's hopes and expectations of what he would like, meaning that Raiden has been shaping him and his personality with every interaction they have. Raiden has never, of course, met the Colonel in person, and he never thought that this was anything out of the ordinary because his entire training has been completely digital, so as through virtual reality missions. Raiden can't do anything with this shattering revelation though. There's a lot of shit going down in a very short space of time. Snake encourages him to press forward, however Fortune ambushes Snake and Raiden, stopping them in their path within Arsenal gear, and she intends to avenge her father, Scott Dolph, the Marine commander who she believes was killed by Snake. Snake makes one thing clear: he didn't kill her father and then proceeds to hold her off, engaging her in battle while Raiden presses forward. When he does, he is confronted by Solidus. He tells him of the S3 plan, or the Solid Snake Simulation, a program which had been devised to put soldiers through virtual reality training, imitating the conditions of the Shadow Moses incident, in order to create yet another perfect soldier, which we will explain in a bit. Raiden, who had received such training through virtual reality, realizes that he is a product of this program. Solidus proceeds to send a massive horde of Metal Gear Rays on Raiden, and while he is able to destroy several Ray units in a long, tense battle, he ultimately gives way to exhaustion and falls to his knees. As he is about to be cut down by the Ray units looming over him, Olga jumps to his rescue, standing in front of him and Solidus Snake. She heroically gives her life to save Raiden, dying in a way that is reminiscent of Gray Fox's final sacrifice during Snake's final battle with Rex. When Solidus Snake orders the Ray units to finally finish off Raiden, Emma's virus starts taking effect over the GWAI, and the Ray units start malfunctioning. Solidus is not happy about these developments, and takes care of many Metal Gears by himself. Honestly, this scene shows why Solidus is such a badass, and it's a shame that Kojima kept him limited to just a single game. Soon enough, Fortune arrives with a handcuffed Solid Snake in her grasp, and Raiden, exhausted as he is, passes out. When Raiden finally regains consciousness, he finds himself atop Arsenal gear along with a handcuffed Solid Snake, Fortune, Ocelot, and Solidus Snake. And it is at this point that Solidus reveals his true goals. He wants to locate information from within the GWAI, and then use it to track down the leaders of the Patriots, the members of the Wise Men's Committee, and finally put an end to everything that they stood for. In a way, hell, in every way, Solidus' motivations for destroying the Patriots and their absolute, terrifying control over everything and everyone is admirable. It's almost something we, as players and audiences, want to support and sympathize with. But the fact that Solidus is a despicable man who will stop at nothing to get what he wants makes it a little hard to side with him. Solidus reveals that he merely wanted to use the members of the Dead Cell unit as a means of distracting the Patriots, especially since they actually intended to detonate a hydrogen bomb over Manhattan to trigger an EMP blast. However, he does keep his end of the bargain that he will give Arsenal gear to Dead Cell and keep the information about the Patriots to himself. Ocelot is, to say the least, amused about the full extent of Solidus' plan. In true Revolver Ocelot fashion, he reveals that he has plans of his own. Seriously, at this point in the series, this isn't even surprising. What is surprising is what follows next. Ocelot reveals that the entire Big Shell incident had been orchestrated by the Patriots, and if you thought that Metal Gear Solid 2 was done throwing curveballs and revelations your way, boy, are you in for yet another huge surprise. Throughout Metal Gear Solid 2, Raiden faces situations, characters, and circumstances that are deeply evocative of the events of the Shadow Moses incident from Metal Gear Solid. It turns out that was done on purpose by the Patriots, and the similarities between the Big Shell incident and the Shadow Moses incident were more than a mere coincidence. The Dead Cell unit played the role of Foxhound. Raiden's personal relationship with the terrorist leader Solidus mirrored the relationship between Solid and Big Boss. Hell, everything right down to the singular, isolated events and obstacles faced by Raiden echoed events during the Shadow Moses incident heavily. This was done, Ocelot reveals, by the Patriots with whom he had been working with all along, in order to turn Raiden into the perfect soldier, essentially the S3 program. What the Patriots had not foreseen was that Solid Snake would resurface, and that he would play the role he did in the Big Shell incident. Ocelot then reveals to Fortune that it was him, not Solid Snake, who had killed her father, Scott Dolph. He reveals that the reason for her having her supernatural abilities was the fact that the Patriots had planted an electromagnetic device on her, unbeknownst to her, which deflected bullets and other forms of weaponry. Ocelot retrieves said device and shoots and kills Fortune on the spot. Ocelot climbs into the cockpit of Metal Gear Ray and decides to kill everyone. He fires missiles at everyone, however, magically Fortune deflects all of them without the device before finally dying. Ocelot tries once again, but before he can do anything else, his arm starts spasming once again, and the persona of Liquid Snake takes over. He announces that armed with the knowledge of the Patriots thanks to Ocelot, he intends to hunt them down and kill them all. Metal Gear Ray quickly dives into the sea and takes off. Snake dives into the water as well and follows in pursuit. Meanwhile, Arsenal Gear steadily moves towards Manhattan and ultimately crashes into the city's lower west side, crashing into the banks of New York City and through the city streets, destroying a large portion of the city. Atop Arsenal Gear, surrounded by the wreckage of the city streets, Solidus explains his motivations to Raiden. Being a product of the Les Enfants Terribles project, he was genetically modified so that he could never reproduce, same as Solid and Liquid Snake, meaning they could not pass down his genetic legacy. Frustrated by this realization, Solidus wanted to be remembered in the chronicles of history to ensure his legacy. His fight against the Patriots was not a selfish one, he claims, but one with purposes of restoring civil rights, liberty, freedom, and opportunities, all of which had been taken away by the shadowy organization. At this point, Raiden is contacted by the Patriots through yet another AI. It is revealed that the S3 program is not the Solid Snake simulation program, but actually the Selection for Societal Sanity program, and that the Big Shell incident had merely been orchestrated to test the GWAI's capabilities and limits. This was the big test Emma had spoken about before she died. It was, essentially, not so different from the virtual reality missions Raiden had been put through during his training. The AI explained that the Patriots are now more powerful than anyone could ever imagine, that they now exist on a digital plane and have access to all information and, in turn, all power in the world. They want to control the information passed down by the society from generation to generation, because they believe they are in a stronger position than anyone else to do so. By acquiring the information via the S3 plan, the Patriots can now control world events and even control individuals. The data they collected will only make them smarter, despite the fact that the GW was presumed to be destroyed. In fact, using the data they received during the S3 plan, the Patriots began to control people's minds and motivations through the Sons of the Patriots system in Metal Gear Solid 4, not only in the US, but across the globe. Now that their S3 exercise was complete, the AI then informs Raiden that he has to kill Solidus Snake, who realizes that he has no other options left to him. Not only does the safety of Rosemary and the child of Olga depend on him taking out Solidus Snake, but he also realizes that Solidus intends to kill Raiden in order to use the nanomachines in his brain to track down the Patriots. To coax Raiden into a fight, Solidus reveals that it was him who had killed Raiden's real parents, basically forcing him into a life of a tortured child soldier and killing machine. Solidus's plan works, and an enraged Raiden attacks Solidus. The two engage in a thrilling, epic sword fight atop Arsenal Gear, which finally ends when Raiden cuts down Solidus and throws him off of the structure, almost severing his spine and ultimately killing him. In the aftermath of the battle, Snake tells Raiden that while the whole mission had been a simulation, everything Raiden had felt and experienced had been completely real, and that no one can take that away from him. Snake tells him to do with that whatever he pleases and to become his own man. He then tells Raiden that no matter what, with the help of Otacon, he will track down the Patriots and their true identities, along with Olga's child. Raiden decides to settle down with Rosemary, and the two decide to build a proper life together. If it sounds like it's all over, it's not. In a post-credits scene, it is revealed that Snake and Otacon managed to successfully track down the identities of the 12 members of the Wise Men's Committee, thanks to the disc containing the virus, with one of them being one of the contributors to Philanthropy, Snake and Otacon's unit. As it turns out, all 12 leaders of the Patriots had been dead for nearly a century, meaning that Snake has lost the only lead he had in the investigation on the Patriots. Things only go from bad to worse from here, as the Metal Gear Saga moves into its final act. One thing we wanted to point out before we conclude Part 8. The ending of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 5 are a mirror of each other in a thematic sense. In Metal Gear Solid 2, players give their name and identity to Raiden, thereby making themselves a part of Metal Gear Solid 2, but Raiden throws away the player identity during the ending events of Sons of Liberty and becomes his own character. In Metal Gear Solid 5, players also give their identity to Venom Snake, but during the end, instead of throwing away the player's identity, Venom represents the player themselves, thereby making us, the player, a part of Metal Gear's canon. And that's it for Part 8. What a ride. In Part 9, we will talk about Metal Gear Solid 4 and the end of the Metal Gear Saga, with another part answering some of the biggest questions from the series. Stay tuned.
Liquid! It's not over. Not yet. This is the liberty we've won for ourselves. Outer Haven.
And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.